Thank you very much for joining us. We've used the phrase something crossed the Rubicon way too many times during this pandemic, but this time it felt as if this is a real Rubicon. So the Greek government yesterday announced that from the middle of January, anyone who is over the age of 60 and has not been vaccinated will be imposed to a penalty of €100 every month. So this means if you don't get the vaccine, by the end of the year, you'll pay €1,200 euros in penalties. And actually, you don't even have a control of paying it. It will be automatically added to your tax. Now, this is something which has been discussed for some time. For example, Austria is planning to do something like this, which in a way makes vaccines mandatory in all but even officially mandatory. And something else that we've seen during the pandemic is that something that starts from one particular group, it will soon expand. So I wouldn't be surprised if soon there will be penalties that will be way more significant than €100 for other age categories. Now, it's very interesting that even the government itself notices that this is a big thing. So they're a bit skeptical and not super enthusiastic with this. Therefore, the way they portray it is that this is not us forcing you to vaccinate. This is us telling you that you need to contribute to a health system that you will actually add to its burden. So there's pressure in the Greek hospitals. So the idea is, look, there's mostly pressure because of the unvaccinated people. Therefore, if you're unvaccinated, pay a bit more. So there's even maybe a free market, you have to pay for your choice angle there. So let's see what we will make of this development. With me today is Jonathan Honig. Jonathan, thank you. And what are your first thoughts on this? Are you surprised? Is this a big moment? Is this a Rubicon crossed? Or we've seen so much that this is just another link in the chain?
Well, and Nikos, it's been really interesting to watch, globally as the new kind of leg of the pandemic seems to go around once again. And thank you, as always, to our super chatters, to our viewers, to our listeners joining us from around the world, from the UK and around the world, perhaps even some from Greece. It was interesting to hear the Prime Minister of Greece kind of respond to some of this, Nikos. He told Reuters that, quoting now, it's not a punishment. He said, I would say it is the price for health. It is an act of justice for the vaccinated. It's not right that they are deprived of healthcare services because others stubbornly refuse to do the obvious. So, they're kind of putting it or positing it, if you will, in the idea that, look, we have these are my words now, but we have a public healthcare system. And if you're not willing to get vaccinated and do your part, this is the price you're paying for health. Now, the cost, as you said, people who might not know, certainly in the US, is €100. That's $113 every month. And that is not insignificant in Greece. This is out of the Reuters article. The average monthly pension is about €730 a month. So €100 fine, especially for an older person, is a big chunk of their monthly income going simply to this fine.
Exactly. And I think there are 3 points to be made here. The first is this indeed a big moment? The second is, what does this tell us about public health? Because there's a very interesting discussion to be had here. We are told that public health, and actually I will start with this and then we'll go to the next. We are told that public health is very significant for creating relationships of solidarity within a society, that with public health, no one is left aside. And with public health, you become your brother's keepers in a way that makes us all better people. What do we see during the pandemic with public health? That public health is telling you, stay at home so that you don't overwhelm the system. This was literally the official message in the UK. Remember, stay at home, stay at home, save lives, protect the NHS, protect the system. Okay. So, and instead of making us better people, now we are looking around and see who is using the system. Why are you using the system more? Or Why is it that because of this person's choice, now if I need the hospital bed, it's not available to me? So instead, it's creating this division that you see everyone around as a potential enemy, as a potential occupier of that bed, that you consider that you're worth that bed because you've paid it. Now, guess what? In a system where it is clear that, you know what, I've made this deal, I paid that money, now this bed is mine. It kind of makes sense. But in this system, this bed is for no one. This bed is for anyone who needs it more, or anyone who, with some very unclear criteria, has a claim on that. So we reach in this very weird situation where this system that was this system of public health for everyone, which would supposedly create this stronger community, is now pitching us, the vaccinated versus the unvaccinated, and is leading the government to take an authoritarian step that would be unthinkable. 2 months ago, the prime minister says, no, there's not going to be obligatory vaccinations. And in 2 months, by twisting this morality and say, look, we're all in this together. And since you've accepted that we're all in this together, since you've accepted the morality of public health, what we're telling you is, look, you are putting a burden on the system, so pay for it. So be careful what moral code and be careful what moral ideas you buy into, because then you can see the government playing that level of role in your lives.
Yeah, well, we probably shouldn't be too surprised about that, Nikos. I mean, for a long time, it's been something like, for example, diabetes is a public health problem. Smoking is a public health problem. So, that notion of the public health in the system, the health system, I mean, that's at least here in the US, where we don't have explicitly the NHS, and we've got public health in a lot of other ways, it's kind of creeping in, but that's been used as a justification for ominous draconian measures for a long time. Now, what about this? I'm going to throw this out because of all these different things going around the world now. For example, in Finland, bars and restaurants refusing to use COVID certificates will no longer be allowed to serve booze after 5 o'clock. In Austria, we know there's been a lot of lockdowns. Lithuania, there's been. Now, what about this? Of all the different countries around the world, enacting measures, what about this? In Singapore, those who choose not to get the jabs will now have to pay for their own medical bills if they get COVID. Patients who receive therapeutics and stay in intensive care units may have to pay about Singapore $25,000. That's $18,000, according to a median estimate released by the health ministry. This is courtesy of Bloomberg. So, I mean, what about that? I mean, that seems pretty, if you get COVID and you're not, well, I mean, first of all, if you get COVID, you pay for it. I mean, that seems like a pretty, what about that? It makes
sense within the context that this is the deal. If the deal is, look, your health is your responsibility, and it's not other people, your health is not a claim on other people's time and money. If this is the deal, then I understand this. But notice here the double game. The double game is, you are your brother's keepers, healthcare is a right, but now, because reasons, you have to pay more. But wait a minute, you can say, I've already contributed to the system. I mean, knock on wood, all these years, I've never, almost barely used the healthcare system here. What does this mean? I have to calculate and now say, okay, you owe me, you owe me, you owe me. So no, this is not a step towards more justice in healthcare in terms of, you pay your share for your own, depending on your own judgment of your own risks. This is a rationalization to say that, no, now we have a say exactly on what you do with your body. And what a shame that the vaccines that have been a triumph of science, a triumph of reason, that have been the opposite, should lead us to the opposite conclusions, that we come to good solutions when you let people free to create and to experiment and all that stuff. Now that the vaccines are becoming the vehicle for more authoritarianism is a historical injustice, and also what a boost this is for anyone who is very skeptical of the vaccines. They'll say, look, this is what the vaccines are all about. So I would say, particularly if you like the vaccines, if you consider that they save lives, particularly then, you should be very, very pissed with these measures. What do we see? The exact opposite. We see people becoming fanatical about the vaccine is important, therefore you have to take it and you have to take it. My take with the vaccine has always been, even if I'm the only person on earth who has taken it, good. I take it for myself. And of course, I'm very happy that my family has it and all that stuff. But in this war of all against all, now the vaccine is not about me. It's about the whole society needs to take it. This undermines even the message that with the vaccines, first and foremost, you protect yourself and then you protect others. So there is no single angle from which you can see this measure and you can say it makes sense. It only makes sense in this authoritarian crescendo, in this authoritarian, I don't know how to call it, where again, nothing surprises us anymore. And I bet you a lot of money that this is going to become the norm. Mandatory vaccines will become the norm. And notice also something else. The two countries that impose it, Greece and Austria, have governments who are supposedly liberal conservative. And I have something else to say about that, but I talk too much today, so
no. I mean, well,
you.
There's people are often, I know, with a lot of our analysis of the whole lockdown, saying, well, what should we do? What should we do? I mean, one good thing to recommend, I know I would recommend, is the Ayn Rand Center in Ankargate, the Ayn Rand Institute in Ankargate put together, over a year ago now, what they called a pro-freedom approach to infectious disease. This is a very long document, a very thorough document that I'd certainly recommend that everyone, I wouldn't even say even now, I would say especially now, go back and review in terms of some basic steps in terms of what to do in terms of how to address the pandemic. I just know in terms of this idea of the system, challenging the idea that we're here to serve the system. I mean, Nikos, I remember, now we're going back to 2008, I'll share this screen, when here in America, we were talking about implementing what was then called Obamacare. And Joe Biden was then President Obama's vice president. And my very curt comeback, if you will, I'm going to see, I want to make sure I can share, I have to be able to share the sound, so we can, get the full, my curt comeback was this idea of, and sounded snotty back then and even snottier now, I know, of, hey, why should I be responsible for paying for Joe Biden's brain aneurysms? If you'll permit me, I'll just live that moment.
You're not calming down, right?
Neil, I'm not. In fact, both Joe Biden and Barack Obama have made it very clear that they support socialized health care. In fact, they think that health care is a right. And I think it shows a real ignorance as to what a right actually is. I mean, a right is a right to action. It's not to a freebie from someone else. And I know it sounds kind of curt in this age of political correctness and altruism, but why should I be responsible for paying for Joe Biden's brain aneurysms?
All righty, I'll leave that alone.
So even on Fox, it was like, all right, I'll leave that alone. I mean, that notion of you are your brother's keeper, as you said, I mean, that is integrated into American way of life, so-called American exceptionalism, is I think it even is in the quasi-free UK, even now.
And something very important here, Jonathan, is the following one. People say, why do you hold these principled stances? Like, are you a martyr at the service of some higher ideals? And the thing is, no. These principles have if you go away from these principles, they have very real consequences in your life. And we see it today. When you give up an inch of the idea what is the role of the state, what is your inviolate right, then you find yourself down the road. It might be 2 years, it might be 25 years, doesn't matter. You find yourself in the situation where we find ourselves today. And I will also make another claim. I think we are the only real opposition. I mean, those of us with these more or less ideas, we are the only real opposition here. Because notice what was the opposition by the supposed radicals of the left in this measure. So here I found the public press release of the Greek Communist Party. Now, in Greece, Communist Party is not a joke; it's the third biggest political party. So you would expect that when a conservative government takes such a radical step of saying mandatory vaccines, the radicals, the supposed revolutionaries, would be up in arms. Listen to the criticism of the Communist Party. So they basically said that this is a tool which celebrates, quote, individual responsibility, and this is trying to bring from the back door the commercialization of healthcare. So basically what they're saying is that the state having more power into you is promoting individual responsibility. So they are not even close to seeing the problem here. The only thing they see is that the government wants your money because they want you to pay for healthcare. And these are the supposed radicals. And very interesting, the other parts of the radical left, the party which was in government some years ago, Syriza, the coalition of radical left, what they said was, the government does not pass a clear message. You told us this, now you're telling us this. Not a word on principle, not a word on you have some rights, and the government cannot violate these rights. So if you see that the left is in such disarray, again, my message is, whenever you see someone who thinks that they don't like something in the system and they think they have to go against the system and they go to the left, you have to explain to them, look, if you're an idealist, if you don't like this world and you want to change it, don't go with these people. Don't go with the left. They are the status quo because they have exactly the same principles, exactly the same fundamental premises with the right. So if you want to change the world, if you don't like the things as they are, we are the solution. And I know it sounds pompous, but it's true. I don't even see from any liberal in Greece anything in terms of, wait a minute, there's something wrong here. But this wrong is not that the penalty should be more or should be less or it's inconsistent. No, there's a principle here.
Well, yes, thank you. I mean, you and we and objectivists are among, I think, the only who think in principle and also know that the practical and the what is principled, help me out here, Nikos.
The
what
moral
right,
and the principle, they're the same.
Exactly, the same thing. The best for all of us would be principled. Thank